I think that the verbiage that you use in this statement is very clear on where you stand on trans issues. I'm going to go back to my original point. You guys trying to take out
Uh-huh.
trans people from sports is a way to eradicate
No,
trans
we're
people
not.
from public.
But we're
All right.
not.
But
We're trying
nobody
to
has said
eradicate
anything.
lunatics like
Nobody,
yourself.
Stasia, nobody has said that. And this is what happens, if you don't mind me saying, what happens, the way that trans activists let themselves down, in my opinion, and you can respond to this, is that you try and shut down perfectly legitimate, in fact, urgently important debate by saying that anyone who dares to question this is transphobic and wants to get rid of trans people.
In this clip, a woke host on Piers Morgan Uncensored falls on her face while taking the position that removing trans women from women's sports is an attempt to eradicate trans people. First of all, give me a break. Stop playing the victim card for once. Not everyone is out to get trans people. She makes no valid argument and flounders to defend whatever point she is trying to make. The panel points out the need to preserve the integrity of women's sports and the need to consider women's safety by removing and not allowing biological men into women's sports. Let's check it out.
Well, we have a panel of feminists, covert and otherwise, to debate. The co-founder of Justice for Women and author of Lesbian, Where Are We Now?, Julie Bindel, the trans rights advocate, Stasia Underwood, the sports journalist and political commentator, Emily Austin, and the host of The Crucible, Andrew Wilson. Well, welcome to all of you. Julie Bindel, let me start with you with this whole issue of trans athletes in women's sport. I've been talking about this, as you have, for many years, and we've reached a point where the current president of the United States has basically announced a total ban on any trans athletes competing in women's sport, including at the upcoming global events happening in the United States, which is great. But it seems to me utterly astonishing that we have John Oliver, who's a fellow Brit, who is on American television and for 45 minutes seriously trying to argue that people who are born biological males have no advantage over biological females when it comes to sport. How can this still be happening?
It's utterly ludicrous.
Yeah. Stasia, look, as I've repeatedly made clear about my own position, which often gets completely misconstrued, as I think does Julie's, as I think does JK Rowling and everybody else. My position is that I absolutely respect people who are trans. I respect people who are trans's rights to fairness and equality and safety. I want trans people to have the same fairness, equality and safety that I enjoy, or that my daughter enjoys, for example. So let's be clear about that. Nothing that I'm about to say is what some people try and frame it as transphobic, right? I'm not remotely transphobic. I am fully supportive of trans people's rights to lead the same life as the rest of us. However, and it's a big however, when it erodes, when the battle for trans rights to fairness, equality in particular, but also safety, when that erodes clearly women's rights to fairness and equality and safety, I have a big problem with that. And no place is this more glaring than in the sporting arena, where you see time and again now biological men who identify as trans, who were pretty unsuccessful competing against other biological men, and suddenly they're winning against women or taking Olympic places from women, etc., etc. And I think the UN came up with nearly 900. I mean, John Oliver tried to ridicule this, but nearly 900 medals around the world, I think, in the last year went to trans athletes in women's sport. This cannot be right. It's not fair. It's not equal. As we saw in the Paris Olympics, in the boxing ring, where you had boxers competing who were banned from the World Championships because they had reportedly male chromosomes, and you had women boxers quitting after 40 seconds because they'd never been hit so hard, genuinely fearing they might get killed in the ring.
The issues of trans women in women's sports comes down to biological differences. You cannot change your biological identity, and however you identify does not change physical advantages you have as a man in women's sports. What is the point in women competing in sports if now they face biological men? Identifying as a woman does not change the advantage you have. If trans people want to be treated equal, how does this not exceed equality? Fairness and equality do not exist if trans women are allowed to compete in women's sports. Sorry, not sorry, but it's that simple.
When it comes to this, we are now reaching, to me, not just an unfair and unequal place in this debate, but a dangerous place in this debate. What do you say to that?
I think it's difficult. I think that there's a lot of emphasis being put on trans people in sports specifically. I made it very clear, like, I am not here to spit facts or spew anything in terms of like statistics or anything like that. I have my lived experience as a trans person. I feel that there's so much attention being put on to this specific subject because what you guys really want underlying is the eradication of trans people and them to not be involved in any system.
No, you see there, look, look, Stasia,
that is the dumbest argument I've ever heard in my life.
Right, it's ludicrous. Where have you got that from?
What a bad
Where is
representation
anything
of a
I have
trans
ever
person
said?
to speak out for others.
I'm more so referring to
honestly.
I have seen certain things that you've said in other interviews, Piers, with like my friend Blossom and other trans individuals.
Yeah.
I just feel that the emphasis that is being put
And what was
on
transphobic? What have I ever said that could be remotely construed as transphobic or trans-hating or wanting to get rid of trans people? Ever. I challenge you right now. Tell me.
I haven't really directed that at you just from sitting here. I more so am just here to say that I feel that the issue that's being pressed is because it's a...
You just directed it at him. What are you talking? You directed it at him.
I think that the issue that is being put on trans athletes is a way to eradicate trans people.
But this is, with respect, this
Piers,
is
can I interject for a moment?
In the 1960s and 70s, when feminists that came before me set up women's shelters, rape crisis centres, hospital wards, prison wings for women, recognising that some men, not all, but a sizable minority, are a threat to women because sexual violence and harassment is a threat, we weren't told by men, not all of them were pleased, but largely they understood. We weren't told by men, you're trying to erase and eradicate men. The vast majority of men understood why we needed to do this. All we're doing is saying men, and you can call them trans women if you like, but men have no place in women's prisons, domestic violence shelters, and sports.
Well, wait a second. Hang on.
Okay, Emily, you wanted to... yeah, Andrew, I'm going to come to you. Andrew, I'll come to you one moment. Just let Emily jump in on what you're about to say, I think, to Stasia.
I just think it's so infuriating because ultimately, I know many trans people, and I've spoken to them about, playing in women's sports, etc. And the biggest issue they face is that they just want to be accepted. Now, if I was a trans woman and I just wanted to be accepted, I'm going to do the exact opposite of what you're doing. You want to paint all of these labels on you. You want to play identity politics. You want to play the victim, but you want it to be treated as if you're any superior. That's not equality. You receiving special treatment that does not make you equal but makes you superior to others is not looking to be included. It's actually making people detest your cause. It's making people think that you are a moron. And the way that you're trying to represent the trans community as a whole by just denying that there's a threat and being delusional about it is not helping the trans people. You're making people look at you from the outside and say, wow, they are out of touch with reality.
I feel bad that this person is trying to represent the trans community at large. She sits there with a smug smirk and annoyed look on her face, and when she has a chance to speak, she continually references everyone wanting to eradicate trans people. And she is not here to talk facts or statistics. This is not about statistics or numbers, and when she refers to her experiences lived as a trans person, she needs to understand her experiences do not represent the entire trans community. Like, give me a break.
I think that the verbiage that you use in this statement is very clear on where you stand on trans issues. I'm going to go back to my original point. You guys trying to take out trans people from sports as a way to eradicate trans people from public.
But we're not. We're trying to eradicate lunatics like yourself.
Stasia, Stasia, nobody has said that. And this is what happens, if you don't mind me saying. What happens, the way that trans activists let themselves down, in my opinion, and you can respond to this, is that you try and shut down perfectly legitimate, in fact, urgently important debate by saying that anyone who dares to question this is transphobic and wants to get rid of trans people. I don't think anyone so far on this panel has said they want to get rid of trans people or anything like it. And yet you keep saying you people all want to get rid of trans people. Why do you believe that? Where have you got that from? You cite my interviews with some of your friends, but where have I said anything remotely that could be construed as transphobic? I don't get it.
I think the verbiage that was being used, it's very clear you guys stand on all trans issues.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
So what is the solution for the trans people that are playing sports? What's the solution for them? We're just supposed to kick them out all entirely?
Let me give you the solution. Let me give you the solution. The solution's very straightforward. Almost all of them competed against biological men like themselves before, but they did it far less successfully. So you either go back, trans women athletes either compete against their biological sex, or you create an entirely new category for trans athletes. What you don't do is allow them to destroy the integrity of women's sport, which is what is happening. So it's very straightforward how you solve this. I don't want trans people to be banned from playing sport. I just want them to be banned like I did with the dopers when they were cheating in sport. I want them to be banned from utilizing an unfair advantage. It's simple as that.
Trans athletes are not the problem. Allowing trans women, biological men, to compete in women's sports is the issue here. No one cares if trans athletes play sports and are not trying to eradicate trans people, but either create a trans athlete sports category independent of men and women's sports, or require trans women to compete in men's sports, as they were prior to identifying and transitioning to trans women. So stop with the whole "you want trans people gone" argument and come up with an actual defense. This woke trans host makes the trans community look bad. Just stop. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next one.